Welcome. I'm Natalie Levy, the founder of She's Independent. It's great to have you on today. Today's conversation is the kickoff on our Money Talks series, where we chat everything business, professional development, mentorship, finances, you name it. Really excited about this series. It's something that, of course, is empowering, and we're really excited to bring it to you. So welcome to today's event. If you enjoy what you're experiencing, let us know. We'd love to hear comments and feedback. Of course, you can tell your friends. And as I'd mentioned before, if you have any questions, we will do an interactive Q&A later on, but feel free if you have questions throughout, you can type them in the Zoom chat as well. So to kick it off, I'll share a little bit of my background. I have a background that spans negotiating from various angles, from negotiating with employers and really doing it successfully, basically at every company I've ever worked at, and also negotiating on the technology sales side. It's a topic I love. It's something that I do basically for fun at this point. I like to negotiate all the time. So it's something I'm really excited to share in terms of skills and strategy today with you all. So I launched, She's Independent about a year ago. And this is really a community for people who identify as women, but really open to all, where we're just excited about empowering ourselves from, health and wellness through to personal finances and business skills. So this is one of our series, but we have a lot of events live. We hope you check it out at she'sindependent.com. In terms of what we're going to cover today, I want to walk you through, the different components of what goes into a successful negotiation, and then also walk you through a few case studies and examples of things you may be looking to negotiate in the coming days, months, or years. But of course, I want to make this relevant. So as I said, if you have any questions, you of course can drop those in the chat or ask them live later on. So let's move into why should you care about this topic? Why should everybody care about negotiation? This is something that, whether you realize it or not, negotiating is something that we do or we have the opportunity to do all of the time. Maybe you are setting up and, purchasing a lease for a car or buying a car outright. Maybe you're purchasing a home or signing an apartment lease. Or maybe it's just an everyday, you want to ask for some discount and you want to know how to do that with confidence. We have discussed and we've chatted about salary negotiation, and that's something we'll touch a little bit on today, but I would say that's something that we'll more reserve for maybe a one-on-one or a group session. But salary negotiation, of course, we can get into many details and many inputs of it. What I mentioned here, in this slide is, if you are thinking about salary, it's not necessarily just compensation, but it could be, what is your title or how much time off do you have? Maybe you're a mom and you care a lot about flexibility. So one thing that's really important to think about when it comes to negotiating is, what are your variables? What could your asks be? And we'll kind of discuss this in more detail. So let's talk about what goes into a negotiation, excuse me. The main variables that we're going to talk about today are preparation, research, or information, strategy, and delivering with confidence. So first, let's talk about the information. When you go into a negotiation, have you done your homework? What is the value, or what is your ask? You really want to have a ballpark understanding of what your ask is or what it can be, so that the other person, the other end of it, they're not just going to walk away. You want them to know that you're serious and that you've done your homework. What are you willing to pay? If this was a salary negotiation, have you looked around in terms of what is the job market and what are recruiters or what is Glassdoor telling you? Google is something that, of course, is a great way to gather information. I mean, you can basically Google anything. I personally love to chat with others. So when I first purchased a condo and I'd never been a homeowner before, I chatted with, friends and friendly lenders, and I really just wanted to get a feel for the market. So having conversation and doing your homework, it's a huge part. Next, let's talk about confidence. This might be the most important piece when it comes to a successful negotiation. When you are delivering your ask, do you have confidence? It's not just the words you use, but do you truly feel and do you truly, show, I know what I'm doing and this is what I want and this is what I'm going to get? Do you hold your position? If you, can clearly show that you're informed and that you're ready to make a deal, your counterpart is going to respect that. And they're probably going to give you a lot more versus you just walking to the table and not knowing what's happening. If you know the dynamics going in, if you can communicate that in a way, it's body language, it's what you're wearing, it's how you deliver it. If you can communicate it with confidence, that will completely steer your ask and really get you to where you want. I will leave, kind of one final thought on this topic, which is practice. If you are asking for something and if you don't have experience negotiating, practice with friends. Pull up that mirror, practice, write down, what are those points? What are you looking for? And really, have confidence, because if you walk in there and you don't know what you want, and if you haven't practiced, it's not going to work out. The final input, that is something that really takes practice, I would say, of kind of executing, is really strategy. And there's so many different inputs that we could talk about here. Approach really does matter. I have up an image of somebody playing, I guess it's blackjack, not poker, but poker face is a real thing. So what does this mean? It's not just about looking confident, but it's not giving away facial cues. It's not indicating that you are, feeling weak or that you're feeling scared. So discomfort is something that is to be expected. And you can use techniques like silence, like, these different strategy and tactics to your advantage if you know how and if you've practiced it. Don't be completely egregious, in terms of what you're asking for up front, but make sure that you're showing some indication that you're willing to make a deal. Another thing that I, love to introduce, and I think is something that many people don't realize, is that an initial offer is actually going to anchor that negotiation. So I'm not saying go out completely left field, but if you want to make, $100,000 and you currently make 80, maybe your ask is going to be for 115, because whatever number you actually throw out there is going to pull, it's going to anchor based on what you initially threw out. So it's really great if you can start the negotiation and throw a, low ball or high ball, not egregious, but throw something that will kind of anchor where that discussion is going. And then, there's many other techniques. I will review a few of them in the coming case studies and examples, but really the intention today is just to introduce some of these topics, to start getting you comfortable asking for things and, thinking outside the box in terms of, are you getting no? Are you seeing no, right? It's really important that if you are always getting yes, you're probably not, I could say you're really definitely not asking for enough. So for the first case study, I wanted to talk about something that's probably relevant to a lot of you, which is, let's say that you are in the second wave or approaching the second wave of a global pandemic, and your building leasing team is asking you to renew or sign at the same lease terms. So first, know your position. In this case, I would say in almost any market, the leasing market's going to be unstable. People have lost their jobs, they're not as interested in living in large apartment buildings. You're not getting the same amenities, or you just don't have the same comfort level living in that space today. The fact that that leasing team has actually offered you the same rate is showing cards. Normally, they would probably be asking you for even a small increase. But the fact that they're asking you for the same rate already is indicating they know that they're not in a very strong position. They're probably getting a lot of people that are moving to other, cheaper locations, maybe to other buildings that are offering incentives. So let's do our digging. Let's do our research. What is your ask? What do you feel comfortable with? And what do you want? So we want to walk through the numbers. A lot of times it is data and numbers, and you want to feel confident in that. So as an example, let's just say you were paying $2,000 a month. And now they're also wanting to charge you $75 a month for parking. You look around, you do some industry research, and you're realizing that most buildings, comparable buildings, are offering 1 or 2 months free and free parking. If you do the math on the 1 month free, that comes out to, $250 a month that you'd actually be saving if you moved. Do you want to move? Probably not. That's a hassle. There's costs in moving. It's stressful. You don't want to do it, especially, in the current environment. But maybe you realize doing the calculations that you want to pay less. You want to pay $1,900 a month and you want free parking. So let's then talk about, how are you going to back into that number that you feel comfortable with? If your 12-month lease, if you were going to get a free month on that, that's going to be closer to $1,800 a month. So you're going to want to go to your leasing team, ask for, and tell them, hey, other buildings are doing a month free. Effectively, I want to pay $1,834 a month, knowing that $1,900 a month, you'll be happy. Apologies if I'm losing you. I'm throwing out numbers here. Again, the numbers and backing into what, you feel confident with, that's a really important part of this. I want to walk through a quick example of something where I actually saved a few $1,000s in my recent move. I'd actually gone to my building leasing team and I gave them notice that I was going to move. And I basically asked them to break the lease over 2 weeks earlier than they should have. And they said, absolutely no way in the world, are we going to break this? But guess what happened? They came back to me and they said, hey, we found somebody who wants to lease your unit. We're happy to move up your move out date by 1 week. And what did I do? I could have said, great, let's move it up by 1 week. But I actually then realized that now I was in the position of power. They came to me and they wanted to, move me out a week early. And so I said, great, let's actually meet at the date that my original request was. So, I want to get out of my lease 17 days early, not 1 week early. And this is called a give-get. If, you're going to give something, don't just give it away, but make sure you're getting something in return. That's what the give-get is. And when I asked them and said, I'm happy to do it early, but I'm going to need to move to the date that I need, they immediately conceded. So that was money in my pocket, felt really good. Quick example of, something I wanted to walk through that was on the apartment leasing side. Let's move on to our next example. So you have a consulting business and you feel like you're just not getting enough for your hourly rate. First, let's talk about your book of business. Are you in a position to ask for more hourly? Are you established? Do you have repeat customers? Have you heard positive reviews after you've delivered a project? If you're starting out, you're probably not going to be able to get top dollar. This is, if you're starting and you're building out a book of business, you need to establish references. You need to build up before you can actually ask for more in many cases. You're going to want to keep in mind something I mentioned earlier. If you're always hearing yes on your quotes or on your pricing, you're not asking for enough. So I'm not going to walk through the negotiation, I guess, in too much detail here because I really think it is case by case, but I want to highlight those points around what is your value? Do the research. What are other consultants, with your expertise and your experience, your tenure, what are they charging? Ask people who've worked with you, what kind of value did they see? What would they have paid? Information is really great in terms of establishing what should be your hourly. Get testimonials, put it on your website. You can also do a case study where you're showing value. That's a little bit harder to establish, but definitely something you can do. In terms of what industry you're in, some industries like coaching, basically all of those coaches are offering a free consultation up front. And that's something where if they have a really high conversion rate, then it makes sense to do it. But don't give away too much for free and make sure if you do go in with a low dollar, it's going to be that much harder to convert. So go in with a dollar value where you feel good about it and you're attracting real business. So that's like a quick rundown on what I would think about, from a consulting point of view. Another thing I'd like to, just introduce, given this is, called Money Talks and it's about professional development, is understanding the scope of if you have now a consultancy and you used to be on the corporate side, factor in, you're probably now able to take a lot of write-offs. So 85 an hour, if that's kind of what you backed into that you want to make, you actually might already be making the equivalent of that, at 65 an hour when you look at write-offs. I'm not saying, not to charge what you feel good with, but make sure you're looking at the bigger picture. So factoring in, what does it look like to operate in those write-offs and how that plays into your hourly. All right, case study 3. And this is our last of our case studies because I want to make sure it's interactive and you're getting value, and I want to open it up to questions. But in this case study, and I've heard a lot of friends go through this, and I went through it, it's about negotiating on your mortgage. So maybe you have pre-approval for a 30-year fixed. If you don't know these terms, totally fine. You can ask about it. And you want to know if it's a good rate. You know, you're told it's competitive by the lender, but of course they're going to tell you that. So what's the first thing you should do? Do your research. Shop around. Meaning talk to at least one other, probably, you know, you should talk to more than one other lender to see what kind of rates they're giving out. Now, here's a key piece. Let the others know that you have pre-approval, give them the information and say you're looking for your most aggressive option. They're going to get more aggressive knowing that you have pre-approval. Now, knowing your industry and, you know, being able to speak their language and speaking to friends or people like, you know, She's Independent and getting well-versed on and getting that information around what you can expect in the negotiation is really also important. Every basis point or every percentage on that interest rate really matters. Let's just say it's a $500,000 mortgage. That's real money in your pocket. When I was purchasing my condo, my initial quote, it was okay. But when I started shopping around and I started talking to friends, I realized not only could I lower my rate, I was able to remove the points or those kind of upfront fees by moving some retirement assets to the bank that was doing the financing. So there are all these different kind of variables and inputs that if you know your levers and if you know, and if you have those conversations and ask to get really aggressive, you're going to find out that, you know, there is room. Another really important point of a negotiation or just going into a negotiation is that the other side, that lender or whoever you're asking to kind of work with, they're probably expecting a negotiation. And that's something that should also give you further confidence. You know, if you go in and you just take or you say, okay, this works, they probably had room. So if you're not hearing no, if you don't ask for more, you're probably not near optimizing, you know, what you can get. So these are just really important key points to think about when you ask for something, right? Unless you go into a retail store, and by the way, some retail stores do negotiate, but very, very, you know, kind of few situations is there no room. So just think about it. You know, what do you want? Walk in there with confidence, make sure you know your asks. And so I want to spend a little bit of time on this slide, which is, you know, understanding where you are, making sure that you feel good about and knowing that you're ready to, you know, step into and ask for more. So a few things that I think are really important to think about are, you know, again, have you done the research? Do you know the market? Are you confident in what you're asking for? Is it realistic? Another, you know, really important piece is, you know, how firm can you be? Are you willing to walk away? When you ask for something, and this is another really big, you know, point when it comes to strategy, what do you do when you ask for something? Silence. You know, you don't want to just kind of word vomit. You actually, when you ask for something, hold firm. Be quiet. Wait for them to speak. So not only can you deliver your ask with confidence, but do you really feel confident when you walk into that room? When it comes to salary, as an example, a lot of women will ask for the same thing as a male counterpart, but they're not demonstrating the same confidence, and so they're not getting it. And then the final point, which is something that is extremely important to kind of work on, and it takes a lot to kind of handle discomfort, but how are you with rejection? If you never hear no, and we already said this, but if you never hear no, you aren't pushing boundaries. You aren't growing, and you could be getting more. So this is something where I also like to talk about failure. You know, we've spoken about failure on many of these conversations and webinars and workshops, and I'm not saying it feels good, but if you're not failing, you're not growing. We go on rock climbing excursions, you know, it's a sport we really like, and that's another place where if you're not failing, if you're just climbing up and always succeeding, you're not doing, you know, you're not getting better. So there's something really interesting about failure, and a lot of founders and people who've started, you know, companies, they're telling you in their case studies, you know, they learn the most from failure. So if you're not failing, you're not learning. So with that, I mean, that's kind of the quick rundown. I know I went through it pretty quickly, some of those examples, but I wanted to make sure that we can make this interactive. So quickly, before I get to the Q&A slide, a little bit more about us at She's Independent. If you are looking for more, if you're interested in, coaching, we do group coaching, monthly mentorship sessions for folks that are signed up for our premium community. If you want a corporate sponsor, you can introduce us. I love to chat business and finances. I love to, walk through and work with individuals when it comes to salary negotiation or really anything. So check us out. You can follow us also on Instagram. But that brings us to Q&A. I know there's a lot of people listening in quietly. So if you have any questions, if there are examples you want to talk about, please put them in the chat. You can also, of course, put yourself on video, or you can just unmute, or you can type them in the Zoom chat. So feel free to ask questions. And thank you so much for joining today's discussion on negotiation. Hi, Allie. You were saying, what's the best way to negotiate new business terms? You are welcome to unmute if you want to add a little bit more color to that. I'm not quite sure what the ask is.
Sure. Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Hello, Natalie.
Hi.
I'm just curious. I guess I can use my video. I'm curious as to, I'm going through some negotiations in terms of creating new partnerships with other businesses in the Denver and Boulder area. And it's hard for me right now because I've soft launched a brand and I don't have, huge amounts of contacts, huge amounts of sales, generated sales, but I'm asking people to believe in a concept rather than something that has financial assets attached to it at this point, to help with some of the founding financials. So I just wanted to get your opinion on that. Basically, when you have, not a lot to offer, but an idea. Yeah.
So are you talking about for people to join the paid community, or are you talking for financing?
So I'm talking for financing. I'm also talking about, just as a little bit of background, I'm the founder of a new women's cannabis club, and I'm reaching out to dispensaries and trying to set up partnerships that are financially viable and sustainable for me. So that includes talking with the dispensary owners and saying, hey, I have this great idea and theory, and I'd like to be a partner with you because our values align, and here's what I'd like to ask in return in terms of an affiliate partnership or funds to kind of create these programs within their dispensaries.
Sure. So I think what's important to understand, and you acknowledge this, which is you're earlier and it's more of an idea. I think that it's an awesome community that you're building. So, I love what you're doing. I, by the way, found some amazing cannabis on your recommendation. So thank you. And listen, I think that what is your ask and what are you offering? And so coming up with some package, and I like options. I think that whenever you are, asking for something or, putting something out there, options are great because it basically could be, pay this or pay this and this, meaning like, if I can compare two things, it's easier for me to make a decision than just one thing. So what I would probably think about is, hey, maybe there's a revenue share, or maybe, you pay something and then you get a better revenue share. But I like the idea of optionality, and I like the idea of presenting them with something that looks professional, looks clean. I think, again, you want to instill that vision because you are earlier. But I think it would be unrealistic for you to say, give me a ton of money because this is a great idea. But I think you know that. And so, listen, I'd be happy to look something over if you want to, shoot me over kind of some thoughts. But I love the idea of optionality. I love the idea of trying different things. Like, rev share and or with a, dollar value associated, because especially with you, since you're early and you don't have revenue traction today, if I can, as a dispensary, participate, with low risk or not have to shell out upfront dollars, then that's kind of a no-brainer. So just make it so attractive that these early partners are going to get a better incentive to join than, let's say, later partners when you're more established.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for asking.
Sure.
Anybody else have any thoughts or questions? Again, you can feel free to take yourself off mute, or you can drop questions in the chat if you like. Is anybody negotiating their lease? Anybody looking to buy a home? We got some quiet listeners on, but I'm sure they're engaged because they're still here.
I do have a question. Hey, everyone. I'm Lauren. Hey, Natalie. I run an international travel company focused on experiential trips to Japan and Asia right now. And obviously, COVID's really disrupted the industry, and we are in the middle of negotiating a bunch of new terms with our suppliers, hotels, tour operators, guides, and it's pretty tough, obviously, with the time difference and being up late at night, but just doing international negotiating during this time in uncertainty. So, my ask is, do you have any resources or anyone that's gone through something like this internationally with negotiating, or books
Sure.
or resources to look online?
Sure. So I actually also do sales consulting for a tech company out of the Bay Area. Basically run, their small sales team, and I have international customers and a lot out of Asia. And it's interesting. I think that regionally, we have to, it's called mirroring, but basically you want to show up in such a way where, there's formalities with Asia. There's, things about negotiating with a different audience that I wouldn't do, that I will do in the States. And I think this because you've spent time, you've been working in this sector and this business. But I think it's really important to honor and to respect, what is an industry and who are the people. I want to bring back and speak to what I said to Ali before, which is I think having optionality and acknowledging, hey, this is a really tough environment. Knowing that, the travel industry today is obviously in a much tougher position. So how can you, with this, amazing, kind of offering that you have, how do you make it more attractive today? So maybe it's pandemic specials, or, maybe there's some language, but I think it's really, you need to be careful because you can't necessarily garner top dollar today, but what you could do is in a way that maybe makes you a little bit of money, and maybe it's almost even more of a break even, you can establish some firmer partnerships and come out of this thing where you now have new relationships and you have a bigger book of business, because I don't know how much you can sell today. Or maybe it's future discounts, right? Maybe it's pay this, and this is a 50% of what it normally would be, and you can use it in the next 5 years. So I like to think about getting creative and flexible, and don't feel bad about shopping or throwing different things out there to see what sticks. Is that helpful?
Absolutely. Yep. We're doing that with a bunch of our clients right now. And I think thinking about that same frame of mind with our partners and suppliers.
Yeah.
And options and negotiating different options, whether we're going to sign on with them for 5 years or 10 years, or just for the Olympics happening in Tokyo next summer, whatever, right? Is thinking more of those options. I've always had that frame of mind just for, the sales side with clients, but I like that.
Yeah. And the other thing is, again, I love this. It's a menu. So somebody may be more apt to say, I'll pay $1 up front for a better situation. Somebody else may say, I don't want to pay up front, but I want to lock this in with some revenue share. So thinking about, I'm not saying that you always want to have some crazy menu, but especially in an environment like this, where maybe having a partnership is more important than making dollars today, that could be the way to go.
Right.
And by the way, speaking of sales or, setting up partnerships, the idea of direct sales, which is Lauren is selling into, every time something is going to kind of sign a contract, versus an indirect or a partner, and setting up a channel where they're doing sales for you. That's also something, great to think about, because if you can have these partners that are selling for you, in your industry, I'm guessing that would be a viable and really smart thing to do. This could be a great time to set up and invest in those partnerships.
What you doing? Absolutely.
Awesome.
We're doing it.
I
Thanks so
hope
much.
that's helpful. And by the way, from a community standpoint, maybe there's something fun that we can do, if she's independent in your travel business. So listen, I want to go to Japan. I love to ski. I love to eat. So that's high up on my list. We'll chat.
Perfect.
Awesome. All right. It looks like Lauren typed something in the chat, and sorry, Marissa also did, which was, it looks like both of you wish you'd known more about negotiating regarding mortgages or leases. And just to, I guess, follow up on that, again, everything is negotiable for the most part. And if it's not, try anyway. I can't tell you how many things I've negotiated where my friends or other people have said, wow, how did you do that? That was unbelievable. Like, that didn't make any sense. I think by just demonstrating that confidence and knowing your ask, and just knowing that receiving pushback or it not working out, that's fine. Have the conversation, talk to friends, talk to me. But why not ask? Anybody else have any questions? I can throw out another example if you like, because it's actually right in front of me. I'm looking at a beautiful piece of art. I was out hiking in Evergreen and I went to a vintage store and I looked up and I saw this thing and it was gorgeous. And it said $4.95. And I was like, well, do I want to buy a piece of art for $4.95? I could, but I want to negotiate. And I'll show you. I'll actually flip the computer around even though the place is messy. But anyway, I went up to the guy and I said, $3.50. And the way I said it, he knew I was serious. And he basically said, this is a beautiful piece. I love this piece. And we traded at $3.50. And the negotiation lasted less than 10 seconds. But it was just something where that's where I wanted to buy it. And I actually probably would have spent $4.95, but I didn't really want to. And it just showing you that here's somebody who says, he has it listed. It's something that, again, we could have, talked back and forth around. Because of the way I delivered my ask, it was a very, very quick conversation. And I'm actually going to bring you over to it because I love it. So apologies as you see a little bit of a messy apartment. Can you see it? This woman and then my dog. All right. I hope you saw it. If you're local, you can come visit another time and see it in person. All right, anybody else have any questions today? We're about 35 minutes in and I love to talk about this kind of stuff. So feel free to drop them in. Again, you can always join our community and it is free for your first 2 weeks. So no pressure, but if that sounds interesting, we'd love to see you there. You can always go to shesindependent.com and then if you click that orange button that comes up, it'll bring you to, we actually have a free community offering. So you can get involved that way. No more questions? Well, I'm so glad you all joined today. It was a great group and I loved the questions that came up. Hopefully you'll be saving money on your next lease renewal or when you are looking to buy a car or anything like that. So it was great to connect today and I'm really looking forward to more of these. All right. Bye, everyone.